Oh, good morning, everyone.
Is this thing on? Yes.
Yes,
okay.
I can stay here.
Hi. How's everybody doing? We didn't rehearse, by the way, so this might be hilarious.
This is an improv show.
Yeah.
We want to talk about the awesome success of both cooperatives and the open source world, well, the open world more broadly, not just open source, but open design, open hardware, open everything else.
I feel like we should introduce ourselves first.
Go for it.
You want to switch to the next one? They know the title. Oh, it's really dark.
Yeah.
So I'm Laura Hilliger. I'm a co-founder of the We Are Open co-op. My other members and I met in the open source world. I'm an expert in open source, says someone. And basically what I do for a living is I help spread the values and processes and methodologies, open practices, to other industries outside of technology. So I help people understand how collaboration and architectures of participation and empowerment can actually be productive in their industries.
And yeah, I'm JOSEF DAVIES-COATES from the Open Co-op, and I'm one of the organizers of today's event, as mentioned.
Oh, you can't see these at all, huh? Can you guys see that? Can you read them? Not at all? It's too bad because it's a really funny slide. I think we should read it.
Okay, yeah, it says, a little background. Open source used to be a kind of crappy alternative software for poor people, a hobby for nerds, and a crazy dream.
And co-ops were kind of a radical business form for people who wore sandals, grocery stores that sold a lot of whole grain products, and a crazy dream.
But now, the software industry is worth £300 billion, and 78% of companies run on open source software now, and only 3% don't use it at all.
And we just heard from Trevor and Oliver about how successful the cooperative movement is, but actually what we wanted to talk about in Okay, can you not read that either? There's a thing on the side that says insert stock photo of people holding hands for a hippie or something. In any case, one of the things that we wanted to talk about was we wanted to talk about how open practices and the things that we believe in governance of the cooperatives that we're parts of have a lot in common, and they're just actually using different words to talk about some of the same things.
Yeah. So as you can see there, co-ops employ 250 million people worldwide, and the largest 300 co-ops in the world together have a turnover of over $2 trillion, I assume that is. I mean, you might have heard recently that the co-op bank, after all its failures, has now put itself up for sale, but don't let you think that's reflective of co-op banks. Generally, a few years ago, Bloomberg did a big study on the strongest banks in the world, and of the top 5, 2 of those were co-ops. And that's the animated GIF that doesn't work.
Ta-da! No, it really doesn't. It's too bad. It's really cool. Maybe Brian wants to tweet it, and then everybody can just go and look. So we're going to have a conversation about why open practices and co-op governance should work together. And as Oliver said earlier, it's kind of amazing that these two movements don't actually talk to each other more, because they're so similar. Earlier, when I introduced myself as an open source expert, actually what I meant is I'm an open source evangelist. I really believe that open source and the values that open source communities have are highly similar to the values that we have in the co-op movement, and we just use different words to sort of talk about them. So maybe we should play a game, and I'll say something from open source, and you say what it's called in the co-op world. You think we can win at this?
We can try.
Otherwise, we could just go for questions. Also,
I mean, one example is one of the good international examples of co-ops that many of you probably know, but if you don't, check out the Mondragon cooperative network in Spain. And they're a network of over 200 different businesses, 200 co-ops, most of which are co-ops. And for example, they have a factory which makes machines for factories. And
Meta.
they're similarly in the States, there's the open source ecology project, who are building the Global Village Construction Set, which is a whole kit of open source machines that could create a comfortable lifestyle from bare land. You can make the machines like a tractor. The first thing they built was an open source tractor. And when you see Marcin Jakubowski's presentations about the Global Village Construction Set, and hold that in your mind, and then imagine if the Mondragon network embraced open source, and that factory that they already have that makes factory machines was an open source hardware factory. Yeah, imagine the innovation and speed of development that could happen. Yeah.
I don't know where to go.
Have we got, are there any questions? Or that we could play your game?
I want to play the game.
Play the game.
Okay, so in open source, there are 3 tenets in open source, and the first one is about decentralization. We decentralize code, we decentralize power, we have distributed leadership models, so the word is decentralization.
Decentralization. Well, I guess in the cooperative world, we have the 7 cooperative principles, and the first 4 are all about what makes you a co-op, and the last 3 are what makes you part of the cooperative movement. But on the first one, it's it's open and voluntary participation, so there's open there straight away, membership rather. The second one is democratic economic control, and there's autonomy and independence. But yeah, co-ops tend to push at least the smaller, more agile ones at least, push the power to the edges and distribute the ownership and the governance to all members.
Yeah, that's what we do in Open too. All members. So we call it decentralization, but in the co-op world, it's like, oh, well, you know, we have equal membership. You want to do another one?
Go for it.
Transparency.
Transparency. Well, that is one of the cooperative values.
Oh, hey, we're speaking the same language.
There are 7 cooperative values. One of which is transparency, but it's things like self-help, self-responsibility, which again are all the sorts of things you find in the open source world, where everyone's allowed to participate, and you try and make it as easy as possible for if someone wants to contribute, that they can contribute.
Are these questions for us? Or are they just like random? Can we turn off all the lights so someone can see the slides? Yeah, I
did that
uploaded.
Work when I did it before? The light switches are in that corner.
I also upload I'll upload my slides and tweet them out later. Let's see, what community development people
How can trade unions support and benefit platform co-ops? Oh, well, all sorts of ways. So, I mean, we've got a session on that. Is that today or tomorrow? That's today, I think, at around 3 o'clock. 2:30, thank you. Which is called A New Role for Unions. And someone from SMART, who are a cooperative network in Belgium, will be presenting. And for example, in Belgium, 90% of Deliveroo drivers are actually salaried workers of SMART Co-op. So they don't have the same precarity of employment as Uber and Deliveroo drivers here, because they've joined a co-op.
I want to answer this one. Can you explain what you mean by architecture of participation? Yes, I can. Done.
Please do.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, you know, yes, I can. So I do a lot of community building, and I work with, as I said earlier, I work with organizations to help them use open practices. And one of the things that's really interesting in my work is that I do work with people who are really coming, they say they want to be more open, they want to empower their employees, but they're very traditional in their structures. So for example, I've been working with Greenpeace for the past couple of years to sort of instigate cultural shift inside their global organization. And Greenpeace is one of the most secretive organizations ever. What they do in the world requires a bit of secrecy, but not amongst themselves. You know, yeah, they can't say, oh, we're going to show up at this bridge and climb it on this date and time, because they would get arrested and they wouldn't be able to do cool things. But they're very secretive internally as well. So it's a lot of silos, and different teams they sort of hold their work to themselves, and they have this idea that if they release their thoughts to the world, that they will get stolen, or that somebody else will get credit, or whatever it is that people think when they're trying to get ahead in the world, have a career. And architectures of participation is a way to basically put everybody on the same playing field by inviting them to be on the same playing field. And it's actually amazing when you work with large groups of people, if you just give them the structures and the mechanisms to participate and show them that they are in a trusted place, a safe space, it's amazing how people will start to interact not only with each other, but also with the organization as a whole. So architectures of participation are ways to sort of give people the agency to speak and to make mistakes and to, participate. I can be way more specific than that, but I feel like we might be running out of time.
We're getting there. I mean, one really nice example of something that does bring together the open and the co-op world and creates an architecture of participation is the Enspiral network, ENSPRIL, in New Zealand. And they would all be here, but they're having their 6-monthly retreat this very weekend.
And we weren't invited? That wasn't very open of them.
But yeah, they've got a story whereby they wanted to create this flat, non-hierarchical network, but the founders and the people that were doing all the work ended up becoming a de facto bottleneck, which they didn't want at all, and it was burning them out and everything. So they decided to quit en masse. So all of the managers who were the bottlenecks making all the decisions said, like, either we're going to work out how to do this together, or we're just not going to do it. So they quit en masse, and then they did work out how to do it. And one of the things they've done is created a new budgeting process using a tool called co-budget, which is a nice open source app that they've built and open sourced. And it has full transparency about who's contributing money to the central commons and and how that money's being spent. And Fairmondo, of course, are another great example of bringing together the open and the co-op world. Their software platform that powers their online marketplace is open source. And you can even see the live transactions on their bank account online going in and out, which again is powered by open source software itself. So there are all sorts of wonderful, real existing examples, but imagine if you pull together these two huge networks. Linux powers Android phones, powers the whole cloud and the web, open source, co-ops there's more members than there are shareholders in the world. Co-ops in this country are growing faster than the rest of the economy, and open plus co-op is certainly a force to be reckoned with. Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say that you can all help with this by going to open source conferences. Some of them are pretty fun. Talking to people in the open world, they don't know this world exists. It's very few people in open source realize that the co-op movement has so much in common. So you can help by reaching out to them, and I'll tell them the same thing about you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.